Hello, and welcome back, my lovelies. My name is Casey. Today is going to be, a mid-year, not quite freak out, but a mid-year, let's see where we're at, how we're doing, and where we might need to catch up on in order to meet our goals. So in lieu of doing a monthly wrap-up or a quarterly wrap-up, I just kind of decided to do just the mid-year wrap-up, and then I'll do the full year at the end of the year. Mainly because I was kind of struggling, especially in the month of May, to really have much read this year, or at least much that I cared to talk about. This year has so far been turning into the year of rereads quite extensively, which I'm not mad about. And I think that's going to really help me stay in a reading mood. At least it so far has. And so I'm going to keep that up, and I will get to why in a little further on in this video. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go over what books I have read, the books that I've rated 1 star up to 5 stars, give a little tiny bit of reasons why, but I don't want this video to be exponentially long, so I'm going to keep it rather brief, no spoilers of course. And we're going to start off with how many books have I read so far this year. Now when I do my logging or my recording of what I've read this year, I do include all short stories, novellas, novelettes, graphic novels, audiobooks, full novels. I include all of them as individual reads, counting toward my overall goal for the year. My goal for the year at the beginning of the year was 52 books, 1 book a week, and I have since raised it. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later into the video. But as of filming this video for the end of June, it is June 30th today, I am at 33 books out of the original 52 goal, but I have since raised it to 75. So doing well, a little bit behind being with the new 75 book goal, but that's going to be easily and quickly caught up on with the project that I'm working on currently. So first we'll go over any DNFs I've had this year, and there is one. It is a recent DNF, and that is going to be for Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarrow. It's either Yarrow or Yaros. I apologize. I no longer have my copy. I sold it. I hate this book. I did not get too far into it before realizing that this book was not what it was pitched to me as, and I despise it. I despise everything about it. I won't go into it because I know there are a lot of people who are loving this book, especially those who are fans of romantasy. Romance with the slight bit of added fantasy. I wouldn't call this fantasy romance per se. Some people would agree. I would call this romantic fantasy, so it's heavier on the romance, and then it has the fantasy aspects as well. It is about a dragon war school where apparently they don't need soldiers for their war because death just happens to everybody for no reason. And on page 18, I believe it was, I knew that this book was not for me, that if I continued reading it, it was going to be a hate read, and I didn't want to go into a reading slump, so I DNF'd it. I will never pick it up again. I want nothing to do with it, and I love if you love it. If you are a fan of this book, I'm so happy for you. I'm happy that you found something that works for you. This is not my book, and I hate it. Next, I have a few that I have left unrated. I do not, and I probably won't really ever much rate the short stories that I read unless it's really impactful for me one way or the other on the spectrum. And I have read 3 short stories because I am doing a full chronological Dresden Files read, and I'm trying to make that my very first vlog on this channel. So I am starting from the very beginning. There's about 68 different pieces of Dresden Files literature, all included in this full chronological read. That includes short stories, novellas, graphic novels, and full novels. And so starting at the very beginning, we have a couple short stories, graphic novels before we even get into the first novel. I have read 3 of those short stories, 2 of those graphic novels, of which I have not rated any. I don't really feel comfortable rating graphic novels as I'm not a big graphic novel reader. I don't have very much experience, if really any experience reading graphic novels outside of just a few limited within my favorite series, such as Dresden. So it's one of those things that I'm not quite comfortable rating because I don't really have anything to compare it to. And especially being the first couple within the very beginning of Dresden Files, there's a lot of repetition, rehashing some of the same things, some of the same descriptions and jokes or jibes or quotes and whatnot. So I don't want to rate it low just because I don't have a lot of experience in graphic novels to begin with. So I'm leaving them unrated, but I have gone through and read 2 graphic novels, 3 short stories, as well as the first 3 novels within the Dresden world, and that was all in the first week of this challenge. So I'm on a roll. We'll get to the Dresden books as I go up through the stars, because we're going to start first at the 1 stars and go up to the 5 stars. And my 1 stars, I have none. No 1 stars. That's fantastic. No one wants 1 stars, really. We all want to read good books, so I'm very happy that there are no 1 stars here. 1 star usually means that this book really did absolutely nothing for me, as I base my ratings on my enjoyment. So this book really did absolutely nothing for me. It's not a hate. A hate read would, well, I mean, I would probably DNF hate reads. So I wouldn't rate a hate read like a 1 star. I would probably DNF it. There are a few hate reads that I've had in the past where I finished it, in which case then I've rated it. But in this case, my 1 hate read has been a DNF, so no 1 stars. For the 2 stars, we have 3 books. We have The Darkening, Mysteries of Thorn Manor, and Shackled. And I'm going to put those up here on the screen. I don't remember the authors' names for all of these. I'm not going to try and butcher them. The Darkening, I ended up reading, I was pretty excited about this one. It was a Fairy Loot release that I ended up getting as a sort of add-on deal when I ordered a different book. And this book just tried to do way too much within the story. It needed to pick and choose what it wanted to be. It couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a revenge story, whether it wanted to be a revolution story, whether it wanted to be a end of the world hero's journey story, an academic story. There were so many things that it wanted to be, that it tried to be, especially in book 1. It just didn't work. It didn't work. There was too much going on. The best thing about that book for me personally were the relationships between the 3 male main characters. Phenomenal, fantastic. We saw so little of it, which was really, really sad. But overall, those relationships between those 3 characters, while strained and a little bit tight and not so jovial and happy and relaxed all the time, were really, really well written in my opinion. So I wish we would have seen more of those 3, but unfortunately I'm not going on to book 2 or 3. I don't remember if it's a duology or a trilogy. I won't be going on to find out if we get more between those 3. It didn't work for me. And the second is the novella to Sorcery of Thorns. This is The Mystery of Thorn Manor, and this one was, in my opinion, just nothing but a cash grab. There were so many things the author could have done with this story, with where we ended in book 1. There are so many avenues we could have explored within the characters or the magic or the house itself, and none of them were explored. The author went in a completely different direction. She went straight romance, which there's a suggested romance in the first book, but it's light. It's not the point of the story. It's kind of airy and flowy, and it's there, but it's in the background, and you know it's there, and it's just this soft thing in the back. And then this novella came along and didn't do anything for the story and the lore overall. It just cheaped itself out on this poor excuse for an additional romance within this world, and that was really, really disappointing. So I still enjoyed an aspect of one of the characters who I really enjoyed from book 1. And I think after sitting on it for a while, I probably would have rated this a 1 star. But at the time, I was feeling a little bit generous, so I did keep it at a 2. But I won't be continuing anything else within this world, and I'll be really hesitant to pick up anything else by this author. And number 3 was a Audible prequel to a series I have not read, and that's Shackled. And I got this when Audible had its sale on all like the 85% off Audible books. I got that in the sale. And the synopsis sounded like, for the main story, sounds definitely like something that I would like. So I wanted to take a stab at it. Maybe try the prequel and have a little bit of a novelette size piece to kind of test first. And this one didn't really work for me either. It felt extraordinarily rushed. And I know it's hard to create an overall story when you have just such a small time frame to work with and a small page count to work with. But in general, so much time, I think, passed in this story, but I did not feel it. It was just boom, boom, boom. Oh, by the way, apparently weeks and months have passed, and we're supposed to feel things for these characters and know and feel the relationship between characters and that they care for each other. And I just didn't feel it. I felt so detached. I didn't care about what happened to any of them. So I don't see myself picking up the main series, but if you have read the main series and you've read the novella, and if you didn't like the novella but you like the main series, let me know if it is something that I should put my time and energy in, because it does sound like something that I would enjoy. I like those tropes. I like that idea within the main story. Based on that first original prequel novella, I'm not thinking I'm going to continue on. But let me know. I'm absolutely willing to change my mind and give the main series a try. Next, we have my 3 stars, and there are 6 of them. And I won't go too much into some of these. I think some of them are pretty well known, and others I kind of already touched on a little bit. So the first is going to be Shadow's Son by, I think it's John Sprunk. And this was probably one of the most disappointing reads I've had so far this year. This book and the subsequent books have been on my TBR, on my shelves for years now. I picked them up at library sales, really cheap, and I absolutely loved the art, and I was so excited to get into these books. I love that assassin-y thief sort of character trope, and also the mystical kind of ghost, spirit, fairy companion in a way. And this, there were some questionable aspects within this story that didn't need to happen. I'm really over reading SA just to solidify that Big Baddie is bad. Don't like it. Absolutely no point whatsoever within this story for it to be there, and it was there, and it made me really disappointed. So I was really looking forward to these ones, especially their shorter reads. I wanted them to be that kind of light, fun, quick romp, and I got rid of them. I finished the first book and I got rid of the other ones that I had. I'm not going to waste my time on it. If that's what the author is going to do within this story, I don't want to read it. So unfortunately, that one just didn't work out. I did like the shadow magic. I did like some of the aspects of the book and the main character and the questions behind his past. And I really am interested in finding out kind of what happens to him and what has happened in his past. But I don't want anything else that comes along with it in that other regard. So I'm just going to have to cut my losses and be okay with never knowing. Next, we have 2 middle grades, and that is going to be The False Prince and The Runaway King. I have since given these to my local elementary school for the kids there. I think it's just a little bit too young for me. I really enjoyed the first book for the most part, which I believe is The False Prince. I believe that one is the first one. And then it just kind of got a little bit more and more immature as we went on. I haven't finished the third one. I could listen to it in audio, but I just have so many other things I want to spend time on. I think I'm just past where I would have been in my middle grade years to enjoy this. I know I would have enjoyed it a whole heck of a lot more if I were a young kid. So if you have young kids that you're trying to find books to introduce them to in the fantasy world, definitely give this one a shot. I think they will really enjoy this one. I know I would have, but as an adult where I am right now, it's just a little bit too young for me, but it wasn't terrible. You know, there were some things where I think even as a kid, I would have kind of rolled my eyes at, which is why it gets right in the middle of the road, the 3 stars. But overall, I think I would have enjoyed it. It's just not for me anymore. And then next we have The Sorcery of Thorns, which is, of course, the novella, or the novel that the novella that we already touched on is based off of. And Solid 3 stars. This really didn't do much of anything for me. It was not terrible. There were some really good aspects that I enjoyed within the story. Some of the characters, or one of the characters particularly, I absolutely loved, and he carried this story for me 100%. I would love if he just had his own little novella. I think if there was a novella written just from his point of view, I probably would read that, even though I just said I wouldn't read anymore in this world. But I loved him so much that I can absolutely see myself reading a novella based just on him and his story. So he carried this book in my enjoyment. Over everything else is pretty much middle of the road. Didn't do anything for me. I was really hoping that it would, because I heard so many good things about this, especially this book being almost like a book for book lovers. And it was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. It was good. It was okay. So it gets a solid 3. And then the last 2 are going to be An Ember in the Ashes and the Audible original, the original. Ember in the Ashes, I read I read the first half of it a long time ago when it first came out, and I hated it. I hated it. I don't know why. I don't know what it was that I so vehemently disliked about that book, but I remember telling myself, you're going to get yourself to halfway, and if you're not liking it by the halfway point, you're going to put it down and you're going to be done. And I didn't like it by the halfway point, put it down, never touched it until just this year. And I went back into it with a little bit more of an open mind, knowing my feelings when I first read it and allowing myself to completely disregard all of my original thoughts when I first read way back when. And it was much easier and it was much more enjoyable this time. I don't know what it was so much about it that I disliked. I think it was probably the main character being as, dare I say, weak as she is in the beginning, and I kind of can see now, hopefully, how she's going to grow from there, which I do look forward to now. I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to her growth, to her experiencing these things that she experienced and learning from them and evolving through them. So I am looking forward to books 2 and 3, and I think 4. I think that's a quartet. Either way, I will be continuing on with the series. I didn't hate book 3. Again, didn't absolutely love it, but I liked it enough to continue, even though I only gave it 3 stars. And so I am really looking forward to continuing on with that, but that will not be for a while. I have other things on the plate beforehand. And then the original by Audible's original is a Audible original book written by Brandon Sanderson, and I don't remember her name. Here we go. And this I only first heard of when it was released. And of course, Sanderson himself marketed it and put it on his newsletter and his website and whatnot. I had never read anything, still haven't read anything or heard anything from the other author, but I was interested in checking it out. It kind of had that Blake Crouch sort of feel to the synopsis, and it definitely has the Blake Crouch sort of feel within the text. I do think that I was expecting more of a Sanderlanche ending than what we got, so I was slightly disappointed in my overall enjoyment of the book itself. And I think I was kind of also maybe expecting a little bit of a Blake Crouch sort of twisty ending in there, even though all the Blake Crouch books that I've read, I've been able to guess the ending and what's happening long before the ending. I think in Dark Matter, it was in chapter 2 that I went, well, this is what's happening, and that's what was happening. So I don't really think that Blake Crouch has too many really twisties that are going to absolutely catch you off guard every time. But Sanderson is known for his Sanderlanche endings, and so I was kind of hoping that there would be more of a Sanderlanche ending than there was. But it wasn't an overall terrible book, and I still enjoyed it, even if it was a little bit disappointing at the ending due to my probably high expectations. And my 4 stars, I have 7 4 stars, and this is where we're going to be getting into a lot of the rereads. So as a caveat, nostalgia probably absolutely comes into play here. But that being said, I really do think that the books that I've given 4 and 5 stars are good books for what they are and what they're trying to be. And the first ones that we're going to talk about within the 4-star are going to be the second and third books of the Half Bad trilogy. It is a YA trilogy. There's a Netflix season 1 adaptation that I think was canceled because Netflix. And I was recommended this series when I asked for books or series that had siblings and really close sibling bonds. And while I don't think I would recommend this book to be for that prompt, yes, there are some siblings involved very, very briefly, but that's not the point of the book. And they are, again, very, very briefly involved in the story. This book would more fall on the recommendations that I asked for like governmental experiments sort of thing. Being chased and hunted by a political or governmental organization due to your abilities or powers, which, funny enough, is a trope, are tropes that I asked for recommendations before, but this was never suggested for that one. But in fact, it was suggested for tropes when it came to siblings. So I found that pretty interesting. But either way, I really enjoyed this series. I hate it or leave it. I love when characters are put through the ringer, man. You look at Hobb, we look at Malazan, we look at Carol Berg. It's one of my favorites of all time. And those authors put their characters through the goddamn ringer. And I love that. I absolutely love when our characters go through these horrible situations that make them grow, that make them evolve and become new people and have different outlooks or change their opinions or just beat them down so that they have to grab the deepest gumption inside of them and pull themselves up and say, I'm going to get through this, and be that strong push through person to get through whatever is happening to them. I love seeing that as a trope, and that series, the Half Bad series, is full of that. Absolutely full of that. So my 4-star reads are books 2 and 3. We're gonna just do a little bit of a spoiler. Book 1 is a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed all of them. I listened to them on audio, and the narrator was fantastic. Wonderful narrator. So I 100% recommend on audio if you can. Just be forewarned. This main character goes through a lot, man. He goes through a lot. The next I have is going to be a short story. Again, like I said, I don't typically rate short stories. In this instance, I did rate this one, and it's Silver in the Wood. I don't remember where it was that I saw this originally, but it sounded like something that I would enjoy. It has more of a natural nature magic sort of concept. It is a LGBTQ plus representation in the main characters, and I was really looking for something that had some vibes, sort of like Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier, that I read, I think, last year and absolutely enjoyed. I loved that book, as you could see in my favorite books of all time. I'll link that either in the description or in the cards above. And I was looking for something a little bit more reminiscent of that, and maybe a little bit shorter, and that's kind of what I heard that this one was about. I didn't realize at the time that there's 2 short stories in the overall fuller story with these characters. So eventually I'll read the second one. But for now, I really enjoyed the first one. It was just this sort of magical fairy tale-esque short little clip of nature and sort of this Celtic feel of the woods and this deep earthy magic that is overlooked, or just, I don't know, there was something just really magical about it, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the humanity behind it as well, and the overall just mysticism of it. I thought it was really well done, so I look forward to the second one, absolutely. And then we have the beginning of my rereads. So I reread Breaking Stars by Jenna Van Vliet. I'm not going to go into this one because unfortunately it is no longer available in ebook or physical copy at all. And then I reread Sandry's book and Triss's book, and those 2 are the first 2 of Tamara Pierce's Circle of Magic middle grade series that I absolutely adored as a child and have been really wanting to get into a reread recently. And so I did. I started those, and they were wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful going back into my childhood favorites and reliving those moments with some of those favorite characters that I remember as a kid being so close to. And I just really enjoyed my time in those rereads. Again, this goes with the other middle grade that I mentioned. If you have young readers that you're wanting to maybe introduce into the fantasy genre, I absolutely 100%, 1000% recommend Tamara Pierce and all of her books that she's written. They are all perfect for young readers, especially young girls who are maybe trying to find their way in the world and find their inner knight. Knight with a K. Find their inner knight. And they're just wonderful little stories, short stories. They're not short stories, short novels that I think are really fantastic for any young reader. So I really enjoyed my time rereading them. I still have the second quartet, the last three to get through in there. And I'm really looking forward to it. But they're put in the back burner for a little while longer.
Hi, Editing Casey here. I am not sure how I forgot to include the second two or the last two books in the Circle of Magic, as well as the first book in the Circle Opens by Tamara Pierce. I'm just a big dum-dum. So I did finish as well book 3, Dodge's book, and book 4, Briar's book, as well as book 1 in Circle of Magic, which is Magic Steps. Dodge's book I gave 4 stars. Briar's book and Magic Steps I both gave 3 stars. So those should be, of course, in the 3-star section. Continuing with that series and ending the first quartet, starting the second quartet of my rereads in that. Again, of course, nostalgia just plays a huge role in that, which just made me absolutely love this reread. These stories are wonderful, again, for young readers, and I just simply adore them. So that was a big oops on my part, so I'm just going to filter that in really quick right here.
And then the last 4-star is the first Dresden book, Stormfront. I am currently in the middle, like I said before, of a full chronological reread. I shouldn't say full reread. I personally have gotten through the first 10 books back when book 10 was just released. And then there was nothing else. And since then, I've been collecting the entire series in order to do a reread of the first 10 and then continue on. So right now I am currently in the reread of the first 10 and then also including all the short stories and graphic novels that I have never read. And then I will eventually get to the point where I will be reading all new material. But Stormfront, I know people have their issues with it, and I'll talk more about it in my vlog, so I'm not going to get into it here. I know people have their issues with it. I know people have their issues with Harry. But I think for what it wants to be and what it is and what it's trying to be, it's a wonderful book. For me, I loved it before when I first read it. I love it now. And I'm not going to apologize for that. So if you're interested in my thoughts, more full in-depth thoughts, check out the vlog when it comes out. It'll probably be in 3 or 4 parts because I don't think anyone wants to sit and watch a 4-hour-long video discussing the entire Dresden series. If I'm wrong and you are interested in that, please let me know. I will make it a 5-hour video if that's what it takes. But so far, I'm just really enjoying the whole experience with Dresden, and we're going to kind of go into the 5-star rereads then, because Full Moon and Grave Peril that I just finished, also I put on 5-star. I just love my time in this world. I love my time with these characters. I love my time with Harry. I love my time in the Dresden Files. I am having so much fun, and I miss these characters, and I miss this world, and I just want more. I want more of it, and they're just 5-star reads for me. I just love them. And if this whole series ends up being a 5-star read, again, I'm not going to apologize for it because it's one of my favorites, bar none, of all time. Next two we have are 2 Sanderson books. We have Tress of the Emerald Sea and The Lost Metal. Both 5-star reads for me. I really, really loved Tress. There was a moment in the middle where it kind of slowed down a bit for me, but then it picked right back up. And then finding those Easter eggs within Lost Metal and seeing other Easter eggs that have popped in, it was just so much fun. It was heartbreaking. It was just exciting, fun. The implications of where we're going to go from here just open the world so much, and I am so very excited. I'm excited for the next 2 secret projects, which are in the Cosmere, and I'm just excited. So definitely 5-star reads for me. And then the next one we have is going to be God Killer by Kaner, I believe the last name of the author is. This one is not quite yet available in the US. It's available in the UK. I got my copy through the Broken Binding. Beautiful book, by the way, and this one was such a joy to read. LGBTQ plus representation throughout the entire book with some great characters. And it was just a sort of, it felt a little bit Japanese sort of esque in a way with the gods and the magic and whatnot that's involved in this world. And we've just got a group of some great characters that I just really enjoyed following. I'm so excited for the next book. I cannot wait for it to come out, and will definitely be ordering from the Broken Binding again. I really hope that it's available soon in the US. If you're interested, keep an eye out for it to become available in the US. And once it does, I highly recommend checking it out because it was such a fun book. It's shorter too, so it's a quick read. It's not something you're going to spend, an entire month getting through. And then we have two books by the author James Islington, one of my now favorite authors of all time. I will go ahead and either link in the description or in the cards above my review for his newest book, The Will of the Many, which is my top read of 2023 so far. That may change, but right now, 100% the top read of 2023. Phenomenal book. 10 out of 5 stars. 10 out of 5 stars. I have pretty much no complaint about this book. The only complaint I have is some of the names were confusing. That's it. They're just kind of confusing names, but that's legitimately probably one of the only complaints that I have about this book. I loved every second of my time listening and reading this story. I loved and cried and got upset and angry and frustrated and scared and tense. So many adjectives to describe how I felt reading and listening through this book, and it was just so good. It was so good. If you have not checked it out, please do so. I highly, highly recommend. It's going to be tough to move this one out of my top read of the year, but I have a feeling that there might be a Dresden book or two that could take the cake. We'll see. Right now, it is currently in its little stand under my window in all of its glory because I love it so much. And along with The Will of the Many is Islington's Shadow of What Was Lost, also a reread for this year. I will be going into Echoes at some point once my Dresden read is finished and rereading the last two of the Lycanius trilogy. I have read Echoes a couple times in the past. I've only read the third book one time, so it'll be a fresh reread for me. And I am really liking seeing the differences between Lycanius and The Will of the Many, and seeing how Islington has grown as a writer in both talent and craft. It's pretty impressive, to be honest, the differences and the improvements in his writing style. Not that I think Lycanius is bad. Obviously, I gave Shadow 5 stars. I really enjoy book 1 as it is. But just to see the overall change and improvement that he's got within just a couple years is fun to watch. So I'm really looking forward to my reread of books 2 and 3. And I'm hoping that it should be before the end of the year. I'm really going to try to get those in before the end of the year as well. And my last 5-star read and the last book that we're going to talk about in this video is going to be The Providence of Fire by Brian Stavely. This is book 2 in the Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne. I really enjoyed book 1. I had read or heard from a few different reviewers that book 2 kind of was a little bit irritating for them in that there were a few characters that made some really silly or questionable or just annoying decisions. And as I said earlier, I absolutely love the sibling trope. I love loyal siblings, sibling relationships, familial relationships within my stories. I don't like it when those siblings start as super, super close and then end up as enemies. I think I sort of got the wrong impression in some of those reviews that there was going to be this huge and massive split between the siblings, and maybe that's going to happen in book 3. Don't tell me, please. Spoiler free. I don't know. I hope not, but it didn't happen in book 2, really, and I would like it to stay that way. So I really enjoyed book 2. I enjoyed the continuing journey with our characters and their overall development and some of the things that are happening to them. I just absolutely love the narrator of this series as well. He is just phenomenal. And Brian Staveley's writing really truly for me is addicting. So I am just enjoying my time immensely within this series. I have the third one, and then I think the first and the second trilogy, I think it is. I'm not entirely sure. On Audible, and so I do plan on listening to those in audiobook, again, hopefully before the end of the year, at least to finish up that first trilogy. I'd like to get that first trilogy done and out of the way. But as for the second book, I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed myself. I think it's gritty. I would personally call it, if not grimdark, definitely borderline grimdark. But I think grimdark, I think that fits for this series, for this book. And some of the things that are happening. Definitely book one, I would call that grimdark, and book two, I think, would fall under that as well. Not as dark, grimdark as, say, from what I've heard, the 11th cycle. I'll put it up here. The 11th, I think it's the 11th cycle. I could be completely wrong. I'll put it up here. I've heard that one is super, super grimdark, and it's probably the reason I won't read it. I'm not absolutely huge into grimdark overall, but I think what we see in the Unhewn Throne is perfect for me, for someone who doesn't like the overly grotesque aspects of grimdark, but does still like a little bit of darkness in her stories, a little bit of oof in her stories. The Unhewn Throne is perfect. So if that's also you, I recommend Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne by Brian Staveley. And that's all we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I will be back at the end of the year with a second half of the year video. We'll go over where we're at then. Did we meet our goals? How are we doing with the series that we wanted to finish in this video here? Did we get to finish them? And where we're at with our ratings on some of these books. Are we going to have more 1-stars? I don't know. I'm hoping not, because again, we all want to read 5-star books. But will of the Many be bumped out of the best book of the year so far with something else? Or will that remain champion for the rest of the year? Check back in at the end of the year again. Thank you so much for joining me. You know what to do. Like and subscribe, or don't. Won't hurt my feelings. And be kind and be safe. And I'll see you next time. Bye.